I do not know, but I can guess.
What would you guess?
A movement to quantify yourself, but publicly, like to other people for like their validation, but also for your validation.
No, I didn't recognize it as a movement, but I would say that my friends in general use specific applications to like track their activities.
I am a working professional, but in order to stay fit, I use multiple devices to track my energy levels, my steps, and things of that nature.
Have you ever used any of the following? If you have ever tweeted the distance that you've walked in a day, uploaded your running course as a Facebook status, or just simply used one of these devices to measure certain aspects of yourself, you are participating in a currently evolving movement called the Quantified Self Movement. The Quantified Self is a movement that revolves around the concept of a participatory biocitizen who tracks and compiles personal information and biometrics. The Quantified Self was coined by Wired magazine writers Gary Wolfe and Kevin Kelly in 2007. They described it as a collaboration of users and toolmakers who share an interest in self-knowledge through self-tracking. The Quantified Self is not limited to the following: smartphone applications, activity trackers, fitness and health tracking websites, and has been projected to expand into the following areas: medical and psychological research that will explore an individual's state changes such as arousal, fatigue, chronic symptoms, and diseases. Right now, the major trend and market for the QS movement is fitness. Here we have James Liu, a professional and sponsored athlete who is currently engaged in QS tracking tools.
I have friends that are really into fitness, and it's cool when I see that, oh look, I went to the gym today, I did 20 miles, I bench pressed 300 pounds, I made my PR, and you know, taking selfies all the time, right? But then I would have to say 80% of my other friends are like, okay, nobody cares. Get off Facebook with this. You're making me feel bad. And so I definitely think it's been a trend. It used to be like when, like, you know, maybe 7 or 8 years ago when I started working out, it was like nobody on Facebook would ever post themselves working out. Nobody really wanted to talk about it. I'd be the only one. And so now it's like, maybe from me doing it, there's like 20, 30 people on Facebook that I know that are constantly uploading their stuff. And yeah, I'd have to say like maybe 5 or 6 of them would use something like Nike or some kind of app to track their movement.
Knowing oneself is the driving force of the movement. It is what has made industry leaders within the Quantified Self Movement drawn to its study and development. Here's Rajiv Mehta with thequantifiedself.com to elaborate.
My own work is focusing on how people take care of their own selves in terms of their health and their family's health and so forth. And sort of studying what do people do, how do they do it, how do different technologies help or not. And so a lot of the curiosity is really driven by that. To what extent will these ideas, tools, etc., be useful to a much broader part of the community? The value of paying attention to oneself, of having more self-awareness, is not new by any means at all. I mean, I think you'll find every philosopher in history, you know, before and after the Buddha, who told us the value of being self-aware, of self-reflection, and learning from that, right? So this is nothing new. To the extent that it's new, it's just that we have a lot more gadgets that both help us measure different aspects of our lives and to analyze and visualize these things. So it's more that we have all sorts of new technologies and tools to apply to this very ancient idea. So I don't think, in a sense, we need to newly prove that there is value to self-reflection. Right? Let's just take that for granted. The value of sort of participating in the Quantified Self Movement is more that you can meet other people who are doing similar things and learn from each other's activities. And in the sense, you can learn what other tools people are using, what other ways people are analyzing things, and especially just from talking to them about what did they learn from the experience of doing it, rather than just from the data itself.
While knowing how many steps we may take in a day or the quality of sleep we obtain at night might be important to the individual, how do we move from technology that is self-satisfying to uses that can make significant contributions to a larger community? Blogger Matthew Jordan explores the potential futures of the Quantified Self Movement.
Let's say there's a patient who has epilepsy, for example, and they're trying to understand more about what are the different things out in the environment that are impacting their seizure threshold and causing them to have seizures. So what if that person was able to wear a wearable device that could help them understand not just sort of biometric data, but also environmental data, where they are, time of day, how bright it is, how dehydrated they are, galvanic skin response, all these different things. If they were able to log that information and then use that to give themselves a better understanding of what is impacting their seizure threshold, and then importantly to be able to make decisions to avoid those situations in the future, that's what I think is the promise of the quantified self movement. And if you take that and expand it beyond the quantified self and start thinking about what we call the quantified us, then it becomes, okay, let's say I'm that person who has epilepsy and I'm doing this understanding sort of about myself and the different things that are changing my seizure threshold. What if I was able to look at 12 or 20 or however many n number of patients who have very, very similar thresholds and triggers and biometrics as me, the ability to learn from that slightly larger set of data, the quantified us, this very, very small subset, I think becomes incredibly powerful.
Whether we are tweeting ourselves over the finish line of our own personal health goals or approaching a future where our personal states are quantified for important life-altering research, the question is, do you know yourself?